It's February 1st, and here is your daily dose of things to celebrate. First, the birthdays. Charles Lennox Ramond was born into a notable family of entrepreneurs and abolitionists and became the first black person hired to lecture by the American Anti-Slavery Society. He became increasingly outspoken as the Civil War approached, but if you've never heard of him, it's probably because his role was overshadowed by Frederick Douglass, who surpassed him in popularity on the lecture circuit. Next, Henry McNeill Turner was born free in Newberry Courthouse, South Carolina in 1834 and became a leading member of the African Episcopal Church, establishing the denomination in both Georgia and Africa. In his time, he was the leading advocate for the movement of African Americans to return to Africa, which was very controversial, but he was well respected for his church leadership. Unlike his peers at the time, he focused on the problems of poor Southern blacks. Francis L. Cardozo was born in 1837 in Charleston, South Carolina, and made huge contributions to black education and was also a politician. He was elected as South Carolina's Secretary of State, but also served as the state's treasurer. He helped develop two very important black educational institutions that we now know as the Avery Institute or the Avery Research Center in Charleston, South Carolina, and Paul Laurence Dunbar High School in Washington, D.C. Another educator, Judea C. Jackson Harris, was born in 1873 and founded the Teacher Training and Industrial Institute, pictured here, in Athens, Georgia, as well as land clubs that improve the quality of black social and economic life, especially in the rural areas of Georgia. Another educator and administrator, Channing H. Tobias, was born in 1882 and played a leading role in the civil rights movement for half a century. He was an ordained minister who spent several decades with the Young Men's Christian Association, or the YMCA, before moving on to a variety of prominent positions with the federal government and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. In addition, he served as a trustee for dozens of nonprofit organizations and educational institutions, including Howard University and Hampton Institute. Tobias received a number of honors and awards in his lifetime, including the NAACP's highest honor in 1948, the Spingarn Medal. Jesse Ernest Wilkins, born in 1894 in Farmington, Missouri, was the Assistant Secretary of Labor in charge of international affairs during the Eisenhower administration and became internationally known for this position. He was the first African American to hold that position and the second black official to hold a sub-cabinet post. James Price Johnson was probably born in 1894 in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and was a pivotal figure in the development of jazz music. So much so that he was considered one of the hottest jazz pianists in New York City in the 1920s and 1930s. Johnson was a prolific composer also, who wrote many songs and scores for the Broadway stage, including a collaboration on an opera with Langston Hughes, who shares his birthday but was born a few years later. Hughes, the well-known poet and author, was born in Joplin, Missouri in 1902. And trombonist Joseph Tricky Sam Nanton was born in New York City in 1904 and became an integral part of the Duke Ellington Orchestra from the 1920s to the 1940s. His trombone playing was recognizable for the unique sound that he himself invented using a plunger and a pixie mute. But there's more. Boxer Albert Chalky Wright was born in Wilcox, Arizona in 1912. In his career, he had 160 wins, 43 losses, 16 draws, and 81 knockouts. He was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1997. A.Z. Taylor was born on February 1st in 1936 in Dale, Texas, and is the only African American ever to be Treasurer of the United States. She was appointed by President Jimmy Carter on September 12, 1977, after many years of public service. She served as the United States' 36th treasurer until January 20th, 1981. And here's a fun fact, her signature is on the U.S. currency for those years, between 1977 and 1981. Born in 1937 in New Orleans, Louisiana, actor, comedian, and singer Garrett Morris enjoyed early career success on Saturday Night Live, appearing on the show from its premiere in 1975 until 1980, and was the only African American on the show during that period. He's enjoyed a long career after bouncing back from several health challenges to be featured on popular television series such as Martin and Two Broke Girls, and in films such as Ant-Man. Another actor, comic actor Sherman Hemsley, who's best remembered for his role as George Jefferson, was born in 1938 in Philadelphia and grew up on the city's south side. His long-running sitcom, The Jeffersons, ran for 11 seasons from 1975 to 1985. The show was the first in more than 2 decades to feature a mostly black cast and the first portrayal of an upwardly mobile African-American family, which paved the way for future series like The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Jazz, gospel, and blues musician Joe Sample was also born on February 1st, but in 1939. He was a member of the sextet The Jazz Crusaders, who were known later simply as the Crusaders, and he was also a solo recording artist. He was inducted into the Houston Music Hall of Fame in 2013. Major League Baseball player and college coach Paul Blair was born in 1944 in Cushing, Oklahoma. He dedicated himself to making a science out of playing center field, and for that he earned 8 of baseball's coveted defensive trophy, the Golden Glove, between 1967 and 1975. Also today in 1970, multi-talented basketball player Malik Sealy was born in the Bronx. Not only did he play for several NBA teams, but he was also an actor, entrepreneur, and he founded his own record label. Although his life was tragically cut short, he left a legacy that is definitely worth celebrating. A big happy birthday to rapper, producer, songwriter, and actor Antoine Big Boy Patton, who was born in 1975. Surely you know Big Boy for being half of the hip-hop duo Outkast alongside Andre 3000. Also happy birthday to professional poker player Phil Ivey, who was born in 1977. One of the best in the world, by age 30 he had won 5 World Series of Poker bracelets, the youngest player ever to do so. Since then, he's accumulated 10 World Series of Poker bracelets, 1 World Poker Tour title, and appeared at 9 World Poker Tour final tables. In 2017, he was elected to the Poker Hall of Fame. And Lee Thompson Young, better known as the famous Jet Jackson, or Detective Barry Frost from Rizzoli and Isles, was born in 1984 in Columbia, South Carolina. Well, that's it for the birthdays, but we've still got a lot more to celebrate. First, today is what's called Freedom Day, as it's the anniversary of when Lincoln signed and approved the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which abolished chattel slavery in 1865. The amendment had been proposed by Congress on January 31st, but ratification wasn't complete until later in the year, December 18th, 1865. Even then, all those who were enslaved were not freed, and it's also important to remember that this amendment did not end penal slavery. Another landmark year, 1960, was when the sit-in movement across the South began in Greensboro, North Carolina, when 4 North Carolina A&T students took seats at the whites-only lunch counter at Woolworth's store and peacefully refused to leave until they were served. They were doing this to protest segregation, or the custom of refusing to serve seated African Americans. This was not the first use of the sit-in tactic in the South, but in this case, the store manager did not call in the police to have the students arrested, nor were they served. The 4 remained at the counter until the store closed, and then came back the next day with reinforcements. Soon, students occupied every seat at the lunch counter, effectively shutting down the business until they were finally served 6 months later. The movement eventually helped to desegregate many public facilities. The Greensboro sit-in gained widespread national attention and galvanized a student-led movement throughout the South within a week. Within 2 months, sit-ins had taken place in 125 cities in 9 states. By the end of 1961, the entire Woolworths chain had changed its policy to serve African Americans. Altogether, over 80 cities opened their facilities to blacks as a result of the sit-ins. And then in 2001, Algenia Warren Freeman became the 11th president and the first woman president of Livingstone College in Salisbury, North Carolina, after having been unanimously chosen. She had many years of professional experience prior to this, from being an instructor at Norfolk State University to taking on different roles and responsibilities at institutions such as Morgan State, North Carolina A&T, and others. Dr. Freeman went on to be the president of 3 additional prestigious academic institutions: St. Paul's College, Wilberforce University, and Martin University. Well, that's it for today. Come back tomorrow for more Black Joy Daily.